You're coming to us on week number 4 of fairing, and it has proven to be a lot more work than either of us expected. Weeks in, we're still looking at a mountain of a job and feeling the feels about it. But the only way to get through is just to get her done. So here we are, still standing and fairing, and sanding and fairing, and sanding and fairing. But we're about to move on from fairing the interior of the bulwarks to the exterior of the bulwarks, and that at least is going to make things look quite a bit different. And we're also going to show you all the tools that we've used for this job so far, some of which might surprise you. So we're going to try to get the fillets done today, or close to done, which means that essentially along the bulwarks we're just covering the welds with fillet, which will stop water from sticking in those places and hopefully minimize the amount of rust that we get along the weld. It's kind of frustrating because if you look at the list that we have here, you see the list. A good number of these specifically would not have been there if we'd had probably 4 days before we'd gone traveling, like an extra 4 days. If we'd had that time, we would not have had to do half of the amount of sanding that we've done. And we could have just been sanding fairing instead of sanding paint first, which is a lot harder to sand than the fairing is. Lesson learned, kind of. But if you can avoid sanding paint, I highly recommend avoiding sanding paint. What you doing over there, Logie Dean?
Making some fancy curves so we can fair this stuff without having to work harder than we need to. Basically, that's the gist of it.
Well, that's it for us today for fairing because it's about 32 degrees in here and the fairing compound is kicking off too fast to work with it. So we're back to sanding for the rest of the day. We got quite a bit on, but definitely not as much as we wanted to get on. But you can only do what you can do when the products aren't working properly. So that's just the way it is.
These are our fairing tools. This is mainly what we've used the entire time for fairing the entire boat. Nothing fancy. There is, well, let's start with the easy ones.
Yes, let's.
We have a couple of these plastic spatulas which work great for mixing and fairing small areas. They only last so long though, but
Yeah, that one's already bending funny, isn't it?
they're both bending funny. Yeah, they're both a little bit curved and warped. They don't hold up to the acetone very well.
Because they're plastic.
Because they're plastic. Actually, they're nylon or whatever. But then the edges also on them, like the very edge here, gets little dings and dents, and it wears the corners round.
Yeah, you can see it's a little bit ragged.
But they're cheap, so that's really good. These ones have lasted us the entire time.
Which is like a month worth of work with them.
Basically, and we use plastic ones instead of metal ones because it's a steel boat. And the metal ones, the small metal ones, are a little too aggressive. They don't have very much flex and the corners are really sharp. So we don't want to chip away paint or scratch anything. The other one that we use that we purchased is this. handy little West Systems, I don't know what you call it, spatula thing.
Like a tongue depressor, kind of.
Yeah, it's got a square end on it, and it also has a profile this way, so it works really well for scraping. So that's the square end. The round end is the same. It has a depression on it.
Sorry guys, we're getting attacked by wasps.
Yeah. So the round end has a depression on it as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's focused.
Yep.
Neat.
Neat.
And it just works well for doing a smaller radius and cleaning up. Like when you do a radius, it squeezes out on both sides, and then you have to scrape the fairing compound away. We needed a bigger radius, and we couldn't find anything, so I took this paint stir stick and made a radius with it that was going to work for the boat, and I made 4 of these the same in case one broke or whatever. We could keep using the same ones, and the profile is pretty good. It works well for what we're doing. It's not a perfect radius, but because of the welds and the height of some of them, it needed to be flattened off a little on the tip. So
Yeah, they worked really well actually.
yeah, it works really well, especially the one that's coated in epoxy and it's nice and smooth. So we use those for, yeah, the bigger radius or fillets. And then we got one of these scrapey things, and it's just for spreading Bondo or fairing compound or whatever. And I've made this the same as one of the sanding pads for doing the radius on the rub rail, and then this is the same profile as the outside of the rub rail, because we had some damage to the rub rail that we needed to repair, and we burnt off the fairing compound off the top of it, like the old stuff, and had to refair that whole thing on both sides. So that made doing that really fast, because we started doing like the fairing without this, and it took probably the same amount of time to do 10 feet as it was to do the rest of the boat. So that really helped out. And you can just cut these with a scissor, and like with scissors, and use sandpaper to smooth everything off. Worked
Yeah.
really well.
That's awesome.
And then we have this big metal trowel, which I've had for a while, since we had Nordic. And basically, it's really flexible, so you can fair curves over a long distance with it. And when you push really hard into it, you can get different shapes out of it. And it's just good for like big, wide open spaces. And generally, it has a curve to it, so it's good for doing like a large radius in one direction, or a large concave or convex radius, I guess. So the outside of a boat. And I bought one of these plastic mixing things, and it's really comfortable to hold all day when you're mixing stuff and whatever else. It's been a game changer, because before I was using this one, and it's just a stainless lid I found and cleaned up, and it was nice and smooth and good for mixing on. But holding this all day like this, my thumb was going numb, and like staying numb for a day after.
Yeah, that's not good.
So it is quite heavy. So the plastic one actually works pretty well. And that's basically it for our fairing tools.
Yeah, awesome.
That's it.
Yay! Yay! How does that feel?
Good. That side was good. Feels good to be done. The first coat of fairing.
Which is the big coat, the main coat.
Yeah, which is
Most of the work.
most of the work. The sanding's not too bad. We have a system down and it'll need a few touch-ups, but other than that, it's good to go.
Yay! High five again.
I want you.
Finished! Woo! Well, finished the first round of fairing the ball works anyway. Thank you so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Engaging with our content really helps to get it out to more people and to keep us making these videos. And a big shout out to our patrons for keeping the wind in our sails even though we're not on the water. See you next week.